You're talking about being an influencer, but not in the I get paid because I have a big following influence. You're talking about the influence that creates transformation in people, that creates real change, right? And that's an impact. And it's like so many of us are afraid to be vulnerable and be like, I haven't mastered this. To find an authentic angle where you can come as yourself and say, this is where I am and this is where I want to be, and please come on this journey with me, and let's build the community. I think it's really awesome. I'm excited to keep listening to it. I'm definitely subscribed.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the Why Influence podcast, where we interview influencers about their why and their motivation for influencing. I'm your host, Jeremy Segal. Today we're going to be updating you on how the podcast is going. We have Nathan, who's going to be the guest host today. Let's not waste any time, and let's just jump into the interview.
Welcome to the Why Influence podcast, where we deep dive into the why behind some of the world's most influential people. Why do you influence? Why are you an influencer? We hope to inspire you to share your voice with the world. And now, your host, Jeremy Segal.
Nate, I appreciate you coming on the show again. You interviewed me in episode 0, and I wanted to do another catch up with how I'm doing. So thought I'd bring you on as a guest host again today to give me another interview.
That's awesome. I'm super excited. So you sent me the first episode recently, and I was able to review it, and so we'll talk about that. But then I've been listening to your episodes. You launched so many at one time that I wasn't able to listen to all 10 yet, but I listened to 4 of them, and I've gotten a lot of useful tips for myself and for my clients. So I want to thank you, first of all, for bringing value. And second of all, I just kind of want to dive in because there's been so much obvious growth, right? I went through the first 3 and listened to how you replaced your interview questions. I listened to how you summarize yourself at the end. I see how your tone with your guests is more conversational now, and you're flowing into your communication skills. They're getting better. So just kind of give us a synopsis of where you think you are right now.
Sure. Well, first of all, starting out, I was very nervous. The first 3, I had to re-record myself, and I was just literally asking question after asking question. I would just completely pivot the conversation just to get to the next question because I couldn't transition. And now I've done 10 interviews that are up and live. And, I'm not perfect at this. I'm not, where a professional would be, but I feel like I'm light years away from where I was when I first started. And I'm actually able to ask all the questions, have pretty good flow. There's a couple areas that I'm noticing that I could still grow a lot in, and I'd like to put some energy and focus into that as I do more interviews, but I'm trying to keep self-awareness on points where I can improve as I go through the process so I can become a better interviewer.
I love that. That self-awareness on the points where you can improve. That's super important. So that's the thing. I really love at the end of your episodes when you do a review of how you thought you did, because it allows me to sort of see how you're judging yourself, seeing how you're being constructively critical of your own self, right? I really like that, and so I was saying it, like at the end of the episodes, I typically, when I'm listening to podcasts, like is the outro music or whatever, I just click, go to the next one when I feel like I'm done. But I found myself kind of want to listen in to see how you're doing so I can go along this journey with you. And maybe it's because I started in the beginning, but I just think it's really, really awesome to see the growth and to see the advice you give yourself. The things you're learning is advice we can use, whether we're doing a podcast or we're just trying to communicate with people and find our voice, our influence. So I really like that, and I hope you keep sharing that with us.
Yeah, so another thing that I'm doing at the end of each episode, after I end the recording, is I'll ask the guest, hey, is there any feedback that you have for me? Is there anything that I could have done better? Any transitions that felt off to you? I try to get advice from the people that I interview off the record, and sometimes they may or may not have advice, but when they have had advice, it's been really helpful to just help me hear from someone else. So it's not just me being critical of myself.
That's super important. Okay, because I didn't know that. So that adds to the constructive criticisms. That'll make you get better faster because you're getting constructive feedback. So thanks for the inside tip. So so we're not just self-assessing, but we're asking from other people. That's awesome. What's the best advice that you've gotten from somebody so far out of the first 10 interviews? Personal. It's going to be personal to you, of course. But what's the best advice you've gotten?
I guess for me, it'd be don't be afraid to go deeper. Sometimes I had my list of questions I wanted to ask, and I would ask the question, they'd answer it, and I would move on. And if there's some really valuable points that could be pulled out of that, I've been working on diving deeper into those so that I could extract the real value, the big points in those moments. That's
awesome. And you got a tool for that. I wrote down a note. You got a tool from that. I don't know if it was from your last guest, but it was if you're struggling to go deeper, you can blame the audience for the deeper question, right? You can. So why don't you explain that? Because I thought that was super valuable. Why don't you explain that kind of that tactic?
Yeah, one of the guests suggested that if we're going deeper into a question, it is a pretty vulnerable topic and maybe is something that is hard to pry at. Instead of me driving into it as the interviewer, I can put the blame on the audience, which sort of takes the blame off me and makes it a lighter conversation for the guest. So I could deep dive into something that's maybe really vulnerable or deep for someone that maybe they don't really feel comfortable sharing with someone they just met or on a quick interview with. But if they know it's for like a greater good and that the audience is really going to enjoy hearing that topic, then I think it lightens the mood and lets them be more vulnerable and more capable of sharing that deepness.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because that's how to do it. That's also the psychology behind it. So I really like that. All right. So, well, let's talk about, you've been doing this for you have 10 interviews live, and you've been doing it for a while. So clearly, because it's the beginning of your journey, there's been some pains, there's been some struggles. So kind of right now where you are, what's the biggest struggle that you're dealing with right now?
Well, when I created these 10 episodes, I sort of did them over time because I knew I was creating this podcast. So it took me a couple months to accumulate these first 10 episodes. And I wanted to make sure that I had really high quality guests so that I could start off with some, strong value that's being given so that I could have that as a base and then sort of go from there. I guess the struggle I'm having now is I've posted those 10 episodes and now I need more guests. Actually, yesterday I posted on Facebook, and a buddy of mine, I asked if anybody had any suggestions for people to reach out to, maybe influencers they follow. And a friend of mine posted on there and posted a name of someone. So I reached out to the guy, and he immediately replied to the email, and he said, "I'm down." I sent him the calendar. He booked it right away. So now I've got an interview for later today to book someone that has, he's got about 800,000 YouTube subscribers. So it's a big, big guest.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep the caliber high for the guests I bring on the show. And I think that as I get more established, it'll become easier to get that. But I'm still early stages. It's not like I'm bringing these people a huge audience with me so that when they interview with me, that they're going to get a bunch of new listeners or followers to their community in this transition period of early stage. But I'm trying to keep the quality high. So it's being a little bit harder to hit those guests. But I guess that's my biggest struggle is to keep the guests high caliber and to keep the episodes flowing.
Well, so number one, your past guests have definitely set the bar high. They all brought
right.
all brought tons of value, and sometimes it's like, oh man, I don't want to step back from here. These people did amazing things. So kind of because you did so good, you got such good guests in the beginning, it might actually add to the pressure going forward. And so we talked about part of that challenge, right, is your value proposition, right? Because you're a new podcast with a limited audience, it's kind of like, why should somebody come on? Like, you're coming up, you're like, listen, I got 7 people that are listening to me. You should come talk to me. Or I don't even, in the case of these other people, is I don't even have an audience yet. I'm building a podcast. come talk to me, and they were generous enough to do it. And so you talk about your value proposition of what do you have to offer. One thing that I was thinking about, because this is kind of, my realm of fun and playing, is kind of coming up with that authentic value proposition for yourself and your podcast. And the thing that's going to do that is by getting very clear on the mission and the message and what you're really trying to do, so that when you reach out to people that are influencers, you can start with the people that resonate with that message, whose message is in line with that, so that they can go, okay, if there's people that want to help people find their voice and they're passionate about that, they're going to help you find your voice while helping your audience find your voice. So as we get crystal clear on that value proposition and the mission of why influence in a way that connects other people and inspires them, I think you're going to have an easier time, and you're going to know who to go after. So that's something, again, that we're going to work with off the air, and we're going to get into that. But I think that makes I think in the beginning, that's going to be really important is what do you say to people that inspires them to help you and help your audience that doesn't even exist yet?
I think that's a great point.
Awesome. So, and then another challenge, and I think this is the consummate challenge. I have no input for this, but another challenge, well, I have one input. Another challenge is getting reviews. And so one of your last, Mark Deal, had talked about one call to action. And he's exactly right, because we can't do multiple things. But the point that could be added to that is to put that call to action at the end. We remember what we finish with. So if somebody's trying to gain influence, whether it's get people to their YouTube channel, get people to their Instagram, or whatever they need to do, that call to action should come at the very end. So that's what people remember to do. And so but other than that, what are you trying to do to get more reviews? Because that's how we're going to help you get better and higher quality people as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, the easiest or the simplest thing is just to go on to iTunes and leave a review if you're listening to this. But basically, I'm asking friends and family, my community. I sent an email blast out to my network and just asking people to leave me a review, because it's really helpful for both bringing more people on, growing the podcast, iTunes algorithms for having you show up in search results. Just, it's a lot of reasons why there's benefits for having reviews, and I try to be transparent with that and just be genuine when I ask people and say, hey, can you leave a review? I mean, you've known me for a long time. You can leave a review based off of who I am or my character, or you can listen to a couple episodes and then leave a review about the podcast. But I'm just looking to get some reviews on iTunes.
I like that. And so I want to double back to one of the things that I first said I really, really, really like. And that was how you asked people for a review after that first episode, where you had said basically, please leave me a review, leave 5 stars. But if you have any feedback or criticism that can help me get better, please still leave me 5 stars, but then give me the advice and the feedback in the comments so I can get better. And I think that's really important, because obviously having 5-star reviews is critically important, and you want the feedback, but not necessarily in a way that's going to hurt the podcast. So, and also,
right.
Go ahead.
I think that another piece to that is a lot of times when people leave reviews, I don't even know how iTunes works, but I think you just can leave one review. I don't know if you can update it. If you can, maybe it removes the old one. But a lot of times, if someone leaves a review, it's not like they're going to go back on and leave another review. So if you have constructive criticism and it's an early stage of a podcast, then I think it's good to not try to hurt the podcast by giving that review, but providing that feedback so that it can grow. Because if you leave a 2-star review and say, hey, this guy jumped from question to question and didn't transition well, a year from now, that review is still going to be sitting there. It's going to be 2 stars saying this guy can't transition well, and it's just going to be lingering there. It's not like the person will likely go back and remove it or edit it. So I think it's important to be respectful in that regards. If it's something that someone has an opinion that you're really against, and it's just something that is a genuine bad review, then I think that's fair. But if it's things that can be grown over time, I think it's better to get that constructive criticism and encouragement through a 5-star review.
Yeah, that's really good. And there was another, so I think it was Mark Deal as well, but it said that influence is as much listening as it is speaking, right? And you'd said you're good at the listening part and the speaking part. So I've been babbling and you've gotten in on the conversation twice so far, and I'm a hard person to do that with. So let's acknowledge that you've made a huge stride in being able to assert yourself into a conversation and just ask my wife. Like I'm hard to do that. So,
yeah, I mean,
you're getting good at that.
The interview that I really got some self-awareness around was with JV Crum. He's a big podcaster. He's done over 1,800 episodes, and I would just ask him a question, and he could talk for 2 hours off one question. And at the end of it, I realized sometimes the conversation went ways I didn't really want it to, or in tangents. And I mean, he did a great job interviewing, shared a ton of useful knowledge. It's just helped me with my self-awareness as an interviewer to, I need to be more capable and willing to jump in and say my things, and then I can exit out of that and let the person keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's part of the skill of interviewing, is being able to guide the conversation so that it has the most value for the audience. But what I'm telling you, throughout every episode, like I said, I was putting down notes so that I could interview and talk to you about it, but I kept putting down notes for myself because I was getting value from all these different people. Red Romina had talked about in the beginning taking the weight off your shoulders, and she had said that no one has to see what you're doing in the beginning, so you don't have to do it so you're proud of it. And you had recorded yourself, re-recorded yourself for the first 3 episodes so that you could be more proud of it and get it out. And then, of course, she'd said, then the opposite side of that is don't be a perfectionist. And so you exercised that in the beginning, and then you took that crutch away from yourself. And I think that's helped your conversation and interviewing skills evolve greatly over the next 7 interviews that you did.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme, because even Nick from Wild Willie FPV said the same thing. He said that when he first started doing vlog-style videos, he would have to record himself like 20 times, and then he would end up with like a short clip that he would use for the video in the early days. So I think everyone... Well, people that aren't used to that, or maybe introverts, or a lot of people struggle with the early stages of putting themselves out there and getting comfortable with being vulnerable. And I think that just hearing all the different techniques people use is really useful, because everyone approaches it a different way or has some kind of unique way of approaching it. And it's something that stops a ton of people from sharing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And what your podcast is about is helping people share and help them overcome that stuff and witnessing you do it. So that advice was awesome. Like I said, there's a bunch of other things that relate to me personally that I got out of it, and I hope everyone is getting it. And the other thing is the way that you review and summarize each of the guests has been valuable to me personally, because the way that you summarize the conversation of things that you see as your perspective from the entrepreneur and the business builder that you've always been, the way that you see it is valuable, and it's a little different than the way that I see it. So I get my value, and then I hear your value, and that adds to it. So I really like that. Hopefully everyone else listening likes your reviews, because I want to hear you. I like the way you summarize, and I like the way.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying to share my journey, because I'm trying to inspire a lot of other people to start sharing online, and the biggest struggle is to start sharing and getting comfortable in what we just talked about, being vulnerable. So, I'm going through that now, finding all the mistakes I'm making and all the places I can improve. So I might as well be sharing that with the community, so that, if someone else gets some value out of that, it can help them in the early stages. Because a lot of people I'm interviewing, they have those tips that they used back then, but they aren't going through that process now. They're already established.
Mm-hmm.
These people are already comfortable. And I'm going to the transition part of trying to be comfortable with doing it.
That's awesome. Number one, thank you for saving my babbling, mumbling self with your newly acquired conversation skills. So thank you. And then let's talk about some of the benefits and some of the things that have kind of popped up. Again, you posted on Facebook and asked for some input from somebody, and you got a podcast book, and that's amazing. That's probably something you wouldn't have done 6 months ago, right? You didn't reach out on your personal to see what kind of personal influence you could use for your business. So that's really awesome. What are some of the things that have been benefits? What are the things that are different now that you've been doing this?
Well, I mean, as you guys know, if you listen to episode 0, I didn't post online, didn't share on Facebook, didn't post anywhere. And now I'm posting on my personal Facebook to my community. I'm posting on LinkedIn saying like, hey, I've got a podcast, and putting myself out there. You know, I'm going public with this thing. I emailed all my family and said, hey, here's a podcast that's going on now. And I don't know who's listening to this thing, but it's just, I'm putting it out there and making it public. And random people have contacted me. I've had an old colleague. He contacted me just asking me, hey, who's the artist that drew the photos for your episode artwork? Because I'm working on a book, and here's the topic of the book I'm working on. It's completely unrelated to anything that is in my world, but it's something that he's working on, and it opened up a conversation with someone I haven't talked to in years. And so I sent him the link and said, hey, here she is, and tell her that I sent you, and good luck on your book. And so it just opened up a conversation with someone. And I think that's something that is unique to me, because I don't have that happen. That doesn't happen to me. I don't post things online. There's no reason for someone to be like, hey, I saw you do this, or I saw this update, because there is no this or there's no update. So that's one thing. I had a business contact of mine contact me and say that he knew I wanted to start the podcast before I launched it, and he saw it go live. And through the past few months, he's been thinking about creating one himself. So he actually reached out and asked me for advice, just saying like, any tips for starting out and things of that nature. And that's new also. I've got a business contact who asked me for advice for creating a podcast. That wouldn't have happened if I wasn't sharing online. I had an old friend from really elementary school, but we went to the same middle school, and we maybe say something to each other once every couple of years. And he messaged me and said, hey, I'm thinking about creating a podcast, and just was wondering what kind of mic you're using, what you're using for editing, just asking some of the introductory tips and advice. I replied to send everything to him, and I told him to send me a link when he launches his podcast. I'm having people reach out to me and tell me that, either ask for advice or ask for things, just having conversations. I've had a few people say, hey, I heard your podcast and it sounds awesome. People that I would never think would be listening to it.
So let me ask you, how does that make you feel when you get people reaching out because of this venture so far? How does that make you feel?
I mean, I think it feels good. Like I'm on someone's mind that comes up and they think to ask me things. I'm helping them. Most of the people have contacted me has been for either that the podcast helped them, or they were asking for a favor or advice, in which then I help them. And I like helping people, and I think that definitely felt good.
That's awesome. I had a question. I lost it. Give me just a second. I wanted to talk to you about sort of what seems to be the recurring theme, and that's community, right? It seems like the people that you connected with, although they have big audiences, it's not the size of the audience that they value the most. It's the interaction with the community. Am I right there? Is that what you've kind of discovered?
Yeah, I mean, that comes up because I'm asking people why they're doing this, and oftentimes that comes up. It's the community. I mean, they could have millions and millions of views on YouTube, but if they do a YouTube Live or Facebook Live and have 10 people show up, they feel way more fulfilled having that community and a live interaction than when they're posting a video and getting tons of views. And it comes up more and more through that. So I'm looking forward to bringing on some more Twitch streamers or people that do more live things to get some thoughts on how they interact with things. Because so far we've had mostly podcasters and YouTubers, and they create content, post it online, and then people listen or watch, and then maybe comment. But there's not a lot of interaction. It's not like a conversation is going on in any of that. Whereas I've interviewed one Twitch person, and she said that just even the smallest Twitch community, you could start doing Twitch now and just join someone else's another small channel's room, get them to come to your room and just interact live. And that's more community feeling than having 15,000 YouTube subscribers, just having one person that you can interact live. So I think community is a huge component to this, and everyone just talks about how important their community is, and it should be the number one important thing.
Well, if we circle back to episode 000, that was one of the main things that you wanted to do, was build a community about like-minded people that are trying to impact and influence the world in a beneficial way, right? Am I
Yeah, I mean, that was a major piece for starting this podcast. I mean, the one was my personal journey of trying to do self-improvement. Another is that through this journey, it's something that I think that a lot of other people struggle with, so I want to help inspire those people. And then there's the community aspect, which is who do I want to surround myself by, and who do I want my community to be? What type of people do I want in that? And that's sort of what we talked about in episode 0, and it's aligned with what we're doing in this podcast.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I call it like the ultimate goal is to have a cult classic community, right? A following of loyal, engaged, dedicated followers that are eager to help you share your message and change the world, right? Because like if you think about, I don't know, in Arizona at ASU, Tempe, they used to have, I don't know if they still do, but they had this Rocky Horror Picture Show theater. So at midnight, everyone would come, you dressed up and do the whole thing. You'd be like, oh my gosh, like these people are crazy. Like, and it's so awesome because they're so into it. It's their thing. But when you create a community and you have those loyal people that believe in what you're doing, that speak your language, that engage, I think that's the ultimate goal for living your most like a valuable, impactful life, is having these people that are trying to help you share that message, that agree with your message. And again, that comes back to what we need to do with your value proposition and creating that vision that brings people in. That you're at the core, but there's more around it that magnetizes people in. And so I think. So
something else.
Go ahead,
sorry.
please.
As far as the community aspect goes, I'm already seeing that, creating the podcast, I'm getting people that are contacting me in my community or telling me, good job, I'm proud of you, and things like that. I've had a couple people message me on Instagram of maybe followers of people I've interviewed that have said a few things. But podcasting as a whole, you don't really have a big interaction with the community. You post an episode. There's nowhere that people are really having a conversation about that episode. Maybe someone leaves you an iTunes review one time and you may have a bunch of episodes and it's not like you get a lot of interaction. So I already see some of the trends that people have talked about, where if you create a YouTube video and get a bunch of views and you have some comments, it maybe doesn't feel like it's as much of a community as a small number of people doing certain things with you. So for me, the podcast, like I may get some listens on the episode, and that's awesome. But like the community that I feel so far is the people I'm interviewing, the people that have reached out to me specifically, or people that I've talked to that I found out listen to my episodes. But it's not necessarily the average listener of the podcast, because I don't really hear from them or I don't really interact from them. And there's not really a good way to do that through the podcasting form itself.
Well, all right. So here's what we do then. We'll just try it. Is you had originally set a goal if you wanted to do 30 podcasts and see your growth from 0 to 30, right? And so you have 10, and we're talking now. So then we're going to talk again at 20, and then when we get to 30, we'll do a live Facebook podcast. And we'll do it live, right? And we'll try and get as many people from now until then. And we'll try and get as many people as we can to come on and comment and talk about the things that they think that you've improved on and things that you have. Like, let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can bring some community. It is difficult, but that's what, right? Well, Tim Ferriss will have those, he'll go places and have people come live to a podcast. So let's try and do that on episode 30 when you accomplish your goal, and we'll see how many people can we get, even if it's 10 people, even if it's 3 people. Who else will come and talk about the journey and how far they've seen you come? How about that?
I hadn't thought of that, and I think that's an awesome idea. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, even if 1 or 2 people show up, I think that'd be pretty cool to do a live interview and just have some interaction and people can ask questions while we're talking.
All right, I'm excited about that now. So we're going to see how many we can get, right? two is the baseline. Even if it's just, hopefully we'll get some more. So that's cool. I've never tried anything like that. That's brand.
Yeah, me either.
But we'll figure out what we can do to get some people there live. And so
well, thanks for pushing me, by the way. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna put out I'm gonna break my rule and put out a little call to action. But if you wanna be part of that, like we'll have to put a place where they can sign up for the newsletter on Why Influence, right? And then we'll send out an email before that happens, so you don't miss it, and we get as many people on there as we can, and we can show what the community has come by the time we get there.
That sounds great.
Awesome. All right, so that sounds fun. Let's talk about. Oh, you did say you had two people message you who you didn't know about the podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was actually through Instagram. There were two people that messaged me. They followed Rady's Rides, and they enjoyed the interview, and they just wanted to comment that they enjoyed it. And so I just replied and said, yeah, I appreciate the feedback, and thanks so much for listening in, and things of that nature. And then I know at least one of them, maybe both, I can't remember at the moment, sent me a screenshot of them subscribing to it on iTunes, and that was pretty awesome.
That's really awesome. That's really cool. That's where it starts, right? There's one or two other people outside of your original circle to grow. It's awesome. And you got that through interviewing somebody that was influential, and they brought people to your audience. So that's really awesome. So we talked about your inspirational, or whatever, the circumstances of the mask that saved a life and how that came. And I've noticed that you asked your guests about moments of influence or impact that have made a mark on them. And so I believe that leads to some stories and things that have been inspiring for me and probably inspiring for you. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you get out of interacting with these people and hearing their stories?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I didn't really think about, by doing these interviews, I might have some impact on the people I'm interviewing. And I've already seen a few cases where that's true. Like, one big example is JV Crum from Conscious Millionaire. He's got a podcast where he has over 12 million listens. I mean, 12 million, and that's a lot. He's got 1,800 episodes of interviewing other millionaires. He really struggled with identifying as someone who had influence. We scheduled the interview after meeting, and like a week or two later, when we were coming up to the interview, I guess that's when he opened up the questions and looked at it and just said, no, this isn't for me. He sent me a message and canceled the interview, saying, look, I'm sorry, but I'm just not a good fit for this. And then, I replied, thanks for letting me know, and maybe, I think I said some comment that might have helped him to keep it as a thought to consider. Yeah. And said, I appreciate it and wish the best. And I think it was a couple days later or a week later, he reached back out and he said, you know what, I think I'll do the interview. So we rescheduled it. And this is someone who has a really large influence. He's got 12 million listens on podcasting, and he's struggling to identify as someone who with influence. He accepts the interview, cancels it, accepts it again. We do the interview, and then he's just got a ton of examples of things that he's done that are influencing, and he's had some near-death situations recently that helped him think more about what he wants to do for the rest of his life. And he's thinking a lot about leaving a legacy, and that's basically leaving influence after you're gone. And so he's building this podcast up and building up his platform to have more of a legacy so that he can influence people years and years and years after he's not here anymore. And I think that's another thing which was pretty interesting, is that he has all this influence, and maybe he just didn't think about how real it is, or I don't know, but he struggled with identifying that. And that's not a common theme. I mean, I interviewed Philip Scott from the African Diaspora News Channel. He's got about 1.1 million subscribers on YouTube. He's got 400 million views on YouTube. I mean, that's a lot. And he really struggled with identifying as someone with influence. I mean, sometimes people struggle with the term influencer because it has a bad rap, or or they don't want that term associated with them, but just the thought of having influence is what I'm talking about. And that Philip struggled with that, and he even would follow up talking about all these people that he impacted, how he's saved marriages, how he's helped kids get straight A's, and he's just impacted so many people. I mean, if you listen to the episode, he lists it all out. And that's just a couple examples. You see, people recognize him on the streets. I mean, this guy has 400 million YouTube views. Like he's got quite a bit of influence, and that's not an uncommon theme for these people. So it's pretty cool to see some of them have that realization to come up, and some of them are early stage influencers too, where they maybe have only been doing it for a year and a half, and they just don't think they made it yet. And then by asking them these questions, it helps them realize, oh wow, maybe I do have influence, and it maybe helps put a little different thought process for them to when they're creating their content and the type of people that they're influencing, or what kind of message they're putting out there, to make sure it's more aligned with what they want.
Yeah, that makes sense, because so I had a thought and I half lost it, but it was so one of the things I'm noticing like that you're doing and that you're able to do is bridge. So if somebody doesn't want to be an influencer because it has this negative connotation to it or whatever, but you're showing where influence you're bridging the gap between influence and impact is what I wanted to say, because right. You're talking about being an influencer, but not in the I get paid because I have a big following influence. You're talking about the influence that creates transformation in people, that creates real change, right? And that's an impact. And right. So I think that's really cool that you're able to do that with people and show them, listen, I'm talking about the influence in the realm of impact, not necessarily in the realm of how much dollars and followers you have. And I think that opens people up, because a lot of these people are doing it either for themselves, but then they enjoy the impact that they're able to make on people's lives, and helping them understand that it's the influence, the thing that they're doing, that gives them the power to have that impact. It takes the negative connotation away from it. So I just wanted to kind of summarize that. I don't know if there's any point to it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and you said, so far on the passion level, you feel passionate about the project, the topic that you're working on, and the more interviews you do, the more that you want to do, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying talking to people who are following their dreams and creating content based on their passions, and hearing their full journey of why they started and where they are today, what kind of struggles they went through. I mean, just all these conversations are just really inspiring to listen to and to have with these people. I mean, when I'm listening to them after, if I'm doing editing, I'm still hearing it again. I'm like, oh, this is really awesome stuff. Like, it's just inspiring. And I think that's pretty awesome, because I know that, if there's a podcast that I was listening to, that I would find it interesting. So I think that's important too, is that I'm creating content that I would indulge on, I guess.
I think that's super important. So I'm gonna throw this out there. You can give us the link, but really, it's anybody who, if you know somebody who has a story of influence, that influence has led to impact, right? Then come to the link that Jeremy's gonna give you, right? Like, it's helping you, but it's helping me too, right? Like, when I listen to it, I'm getting stuff that's valuable to me. I'm seeing what's valuable to you. I'm really enjoying it. So we need to get more people here. We're going to put together a plan to get those people. But if you're listening now, and you can help us with people that are turning influence into impact, and we can talk about why they do it and how they do it, please send them the link or sign them up. I don't know how we force them into it, but let's get some more people. Let's help Jeremy get some more people on here any way we can, so that we can keep getting the value. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so. I think that, we talked about my journey and my struggles with trying to be a better interviewer, trying to get more iTunes reviews, trying to get more guests for the show. I mean, I'm trying to keep the caliber high. So I'd rather have a slower pace of bringing guests on than to just flood the gates with a bunch of people that I don't really want to have on there. I want to feel aligned with a lot of their visions. But I guess as far as if you're going to refer some guests to me, you can do it. Really, just message me on any social platform that we're on, which you can find on our website, or just send an email. There's a contact form on the website as well. You can send a private message through Instagram. Anyway, all of it goes to me, and I'll see it. You can also refer someone to go to check out the podcast, and maybe tell them to request themselves if you don't want to push it for them, or if there's influencers that you watch or taking their content, I'd be happy to reach out. That's how I got this one I'm doing later today. Is I post on my personal Facebook just asking for anybody to refer people they know that they would like to see have an interview done, and someone suggested someone, and I haven't heard of that person before, but I contacted them, and within 30 minutes they were already booked on my calendar for an interview. And you never know what people are going to do. A lot of people may ignore the email, and some people may just say that's not the right time. I just had another one reply to me about an hour before this interview with you. It was from another friend who referred to, hey, like, I listened to these YouTube channels. I reached out to them, and one of them replied, said, I'm pretty busy right now with everything, but reach out in 6 to 9 months and we can reevaluate. So then I just put a reminder in my calendar, and like 7 months-ish, I'll follow up and say, hey, to the reply to that email, just, hey, this is what you said 6 to 9 months ago, and just following up. So I think it's just a process to get people in line. I also want to bring some of the people that I've already interviewed back on the show as an update in the future. So I think that's something that I look forward to doing, especially one person that we've been talking about doing it for is Rady's Rides, which if you haven't listened to that episode, it's pretty awesome, episode 7. He is a school teacher and now is a full-time YouTuber, and he's getting about 1,000 new subscribers every 2 to 3 days, and his growth is it's just unstoppable. He's going to keep going. He's creating so much content, and I'm looking forward to just sharing his journey. Maybe doing an interview every couple months would be pretty cool. So if there's any interviews that you've heard that you really enjoy, that you want to hear the same person come on again, give an update, you can tell me about that, and I'll push a little harder to get that done, because some of these people I've interviewed are pretty big, and I also don't have a big audience to send their way. So a couple of them may not be returning. It depends on the situation. But if there's more reason for me to push for it, then I would do that.
Well, and listen, if the audience asks for them to come back, then that'll be a good reason for them to come back. So they should send any requests they have for sure. Right. I think that's all awesome stuff. I'm really proud of how far you've come. I think you've given us a lot of things that we can all do from at the beginning of our journey to be authentic in the pursuit to get better. Right, like that's the thing, is we see all these gurus and all these people that come from the I've already made it and here's how to get here, and it's like so many of us are afraid to be vulnerable and be like, I haven't mastered this. To find an authentic angle where you can come as yourself and say, this is where I am and this is where I want to be, and please come on this journey with me, and let's build the community. I think it's really awesome. I'm excited to keep listening to it. I'm definitely subscribed. So I can't wait for number 20, and then for live number 30, after you've done 30, when we can review live and see if we can get some live community. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, so the one final call to action we'll end the episode on is go to the website and subscribe to the newsletter so you can be notified of that episode 30 live interview. It's whyinfluence.com, whyinfluence.com. Just scroll to the bottom. You can type your email in, push submit, and we'll notify you of that episode 30.
Awesome!
Well, that concludes the interview. Thanks so much for listening to the episode in its entirety. Nathan, thanks again for coming on as a guest host and interviewing me for the podcast. The outro is going to be short today since the entire episode is pretty much just an extended outro. I like how Nathan saw a gap in the community when we were talking about how the podcast felt disconnected, which is similar to how guests have talked about how communities felt for podcasting or doing YouTube videos versus doing live streams and Twitches. I definitely had zero plans before this interview to do a live stream at all, and just in general, indefinitely. And Nathan put it out there that I should do a live stream for after we hit 30 interviews to sort of celebrate and let the community come in and see how it goes. So I'm accepting that challenge. So if you're listening to this, please subscribe to our newsletter on our website so that you can be notified when the live stream is going to happen. I have no idea when it's going to happen right now. We have 10 interviews that have been done and also posted. We have 0 in the pipeline. We have 2 interviews scheduled, and then another 1 to 5 people who said they'll interview but haven't scheduled yet. So I have no idea when we're going to hit 30. So the best way to be notified of this live stream episode would be to subscribe to our newsletter on our website. I have no idea who's listening to this podcast, so I'd love to have you join us for the Facebook Live once we hit 30 interviews. So just go to the website, whyinfluence.com, whyinfluence.com, scroll to the bottom, type your email address, and submit, and we'll be notifying you of when we schedule this live streamed interview after we hit 30 interviews. It's going to be a little while, but subscribe to the newsletter, and I'll send out a blast when we have that figured out. Thanks again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.